Today's video, we're going to be going back and having a look at the McFarlane toys. This is Spawn Classic Series 25. This is comic covers Spawn 8. Now, you'd be correct. I did have a look at this figure. The first time I had a look at him, actually, was back on September 15th, 2013, when we first had a look at Series 25, the classic comic covers Spawn 8 here. He still looks just as good as he did back when I first had a look at him, because unfortunately I've stored him away ever since. Before we have a look at his accessories, and it's few and far between, not really much at all that comes included with this one, we're going to have a look at how tall the figure stands. Now, you could be of two minds. You could either measure him up to his head, which would be about a 6.5 tall figure, or if you want to take it to the top of his cape, then the figure is actually closer to being about 7 inches in height. The only thing missing from the first time I had a look at this figure was the little cardboard comic little base, little display, and it came with a little display stand. I don't know what happened to it. Maybe the gremlins got to it. Maybe a giant rat colony have taken it back and worship it as a god. I really don't know. I don't know. What I do know, though, is I still have the base. Now, this is a turnstile base, so it has a little lever on the side, and you're supposed to spin it. I really don't know what purpose this served back then. I still don't know what purpose it serves now. You could scratch some tracks on there. Or I guess it's intended for you just to spin and rotate the figure. There's also these little connector points on the sides, which still has eluded me as to what these are specifically for, other than for the fact that maybe you're supposed to attach more than one of these together if you want to have, you know, several different display bases together. Couple of holes. I mean, that's couldn't be further from the truth. The whole thing is covered in holes because he does also come with these little pegs, and I'm surprised that I still have these. I have 2 of them. I'm going to assume that 2 came with the figure when I first got him, and it's to attach the figure to the display base. Now, if I put the figure right here, you could simply just pick a point, any point, pick a hole, and insert it, but then you'll have to line the figure up afterwards. It's actually a lot easier if you attach the pegs first to his feet, like so. This one here, sadly, has gotten a little bent in the process, maybe just the way it was standing, I don't know. And that can also plug into place. And then once those are in place, then you can line it up to a hole. Just line it up to whatever holes you feel will best fit the figure. And now he's on his display base. And then going back to the little spinning disc here, if I move my fingers out of the way, again, you can spin the figure. Why? I have absolutely no idea, but it's there. That's what McFarlane has decided that he wants you to do with this particular figure, I guess, is just rotating it back and forth. Now, the thing is about the pegs, if you take the figure off, the pegs most likely will still stay in his feet. I do find them very tricky to get out. So what I did back then and what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to introduce a new tool to this channel. We'll call them pinchy. I don't know. It's just these little pliers. I say little. I mean, they're quite a big set of pliers, and I have to use those to pull these little tabs out. These little pins, I guess you want to call them. They just will not stay. They just will not come out easily. So unfortunately, I'll have to do that. I guess you could theoretically just put the figure on the base too. I mean, it doesn't really have. I almost thought he was going to tip over, but he doesn't really have any problems standing. He's got a good stable footing. Luckily, he's got large feet, and that foot, the one that's in the capped boot, is flat enough. He's not going to go anywhere, so you really don't need those little tabs, those little extra pegs. Pegs, I guess, would be the best word to describe it. Okay, so we'll move that out of the way. So just going through our checklist right now. Lost the cardboard cover. Still have the base. Have to use pinchy to take the pegs out. Okay, so we're caught up to date. Having a look at this figure, I really love this figure. This is actually one of my favorite spawns, and yet, much like other things I've loved so much in life, got stored away in storage. I just so happened to be grabbing one figure to review it, because I just had an ankling to review it again, and I came across this guy. What a nice little gem. In fact, of all the figures that I own, I actually get more excited if I'm going through totes and I find a Spawn figure. It seems to be just like a diamond in the rough, but when I find it, the first thing I'm thinking is, oh, I hope he has all the pieces. I look, of course, in the little bag that he would have been stored in, and sure enough, again, other than the little cardboard, which I'm not going to lose a whole lot of sleep for, everything on this guy was intact. That would be an interesting question, actually, to pose, so I'll pose that right now. Of your collection, if you have anything stored away in totes, what is the one figure you get most excited to find stored away in your totes? Like what category? Like a superhero figure, a Superman figure, a Batman figure? It's probably one of the most vaguest questions I've asked you guys, but let me know down below. For me, it's always like Spawn. I always get really excited for Spawn. I guess it's just because of his cape. The red, colorful, very textured, very well sculpted cape is always the thing that kind of just stands out to me. That's the first thing I see when I'm kind of like going through the totes, is the cape. So in this instance, we have Spawn in a very textured sort of cape. He is holding one end. I use the term holding very loosely. In fact, actually the cape is just draped over his elbow and forearm. His hand almost looks the indication that he should be holding something, but there's really nothing there. There's no longer strand that we've seen with some other Spawn figures. There's no like little hook that you can hook in there. Instead, the cape, soft as it is, just sort of rests on top of his forearm there. He is very pre-posed as you could probably get it for Spawn figures. He pretty much dictates this is exactly what you're going to do with this figure, and I'm perfectly fine with this. This is sort of more a showpiece than I would say an action figure, which Spawn creator Todd McFarlane so loves to use from time to time. He says action figure. I guess the action for him is pose. It's certainly not articulation, and shame on him for giving us articulation, which I can actually pretty much do in the next second or so. He has rotation in the one boot. This foot has articulation. He does have it also in the legs, but again, why would you can't rotate it. It's just going to have the figure leaning forward. Waist articulation, head articulation, and arms. I guess that does seem like a lot, but he is pre-posed in the sense that other than maybe the arm, but you'll see as you move the arm, the shoulder area of the cape is just going to ride up. It's going to look awkward, and the hand isn't really doing anything anyways, that you're probably just going to want to keep it straight down. So articulation, I say shenanigans. Did I just say shenanigans? I did. Shenanigans. Having a look at his face, it's very tried and true go-to Spawn face. Nothing terribly wrong with that at all. Has some rather nice panel outlining around the greens of his eyes. The coloring on the side, I guess markings on his mask are actually raised. Or rather, I should say, yeah, they are raised. I thought maybe the rest of the mask was the raised part. This was a recessed area, but they are raised from the rest of the mask. Bit of a wrinkling around the eyebrow area like that. A very squared off, very traditional looking Spawn face. Unfortunately though, getting him out of the, I want to say package, but obviously far removed was the packaging. When I did, however, get it out of packaging, it still has stayed this way to this day. This part here wasn't sticking straight up. I think technically it's supposed to kind of stick straight up, and then the other cape end is supposed to, the collar portion is supposed to stick out like that. The only way I'll be able to actually do that is to heat this up. In the meantime, it's just going to go limp, and it's going to curve like this. So maybe a little bit of heating will be in its immediate future, just so I could have the collar sticking up, which I think is the way I'd like to go with this figure. Like some of the other gems that I've found in my collection of in recent memory. This is another figure that I'd like to put back out on display because I just really like the design of it. Love Spawns as a whole, but this one particularly I really do quite a bit like. Okay, so we just move his cape out of the way. He does have the M shape, if you will. Gone is the day of the red on the interior. Instead, it's all black with this being the same coloring as his mask. And then of course you got the big pops of color. Hey, it's the 90s, so everything has to be pocketed. Shatterstar, Spawn, Youngblood, anything basically from the 90s, created in the 90s, would have had the little pockets like this. Pockets on the legs, pockets on the arms. Who knows what Spawn would actually put in there? Who knows why Malebolgia would actually create a Spawn, I guess in his likeness, or in his image, why he would feel the need that Spawn would have to have pockets. That gives you something to think about. A few spikes sticking around the ankle bracelets here, ankle shackles. I don't know what you would really call these, but there are some spikes sticking out nonetheless. Some spikes sticking out on the tops of his feet. And then of course he's got the big clunking boots. I feel as if this would be the most impossible thing to walk around in, and yet somehow Spawn manages to do that. Just laced with spikes. Spikes everywhere. As far as the eye can see, all painted in silver. And you got some nice panel outlining in there as well. They've textured the boot rather nicely too. So it's just not simply a smooth plastic. Then of course you've got the skulls on his waist. He's got the same similar types of skulls at the top. They've even panel lined the areas around the eyes. Nicely done. He does have chains. These ones here are sculpted to his body, which you would think actually it would be the opposite. McFarlane loves just to drape chains from everything, and yet here he's sculpted it to the biceps. Can't do anything with it. These, on the other hand, just drape. He gets 2 sets, and they both run to the back of the figure, right at the back there. Then, of course, we get to the cape, and that is the most splendid portion of this particular figure, is the cape. It always tends to be the capes on these figures that impress me. Again, you've got lots of texturing, little frayed, ripped away areas of the cape. It's not the most pristine looking cape, and I wouldn't have it any other way. It is layered, so this part of the cape, this part here, is a separate piece. However, they glue it to the lower part of the cape. And then this part, the part that comes back from the shoulder, so if we follow our way around, this part here is a separate piece. And it just sits loose, loosey-goosey. Lots of rips here. Gets a little on the dirtier end here, which is perfect. I mean, I could sit here and just admire the little creases, little wrinkled areas of the cape all day long. I probably could too. That's really sad. And then on the interior, just to give it that sense of shading and the fact that no light would hit in there, he's darkened, or the team have darkened, the interior section of the cape. So just kind of gives it some sense of depth. I suppose we don't technically need to go through his posability, having already done that. I guess just as a whole, I again really like this particular figure. The hardest part for getting any of these Spawn figures, though, especially in aftermarket, is trying to remember the names of these. Like this one here, again, is McFarlane Toys. I think it's Spawn Series 25 Classic Comic Covers Spawn 8, which I think is then based on a different issue. It's like issue 95. First of all, that's extremely difficult to put that all in a title of a review. And it's even more difficult, say, if you come across this figure, trying to name exactly what it's from. McFarlane just, again, likes to tack a whole lot of stuff on the title. But for the sake of this throwback, I think when I eventually title this, I'll probably just title this as the McFarlane Toys Spawn Series 25 Classic Comic Covers Spawn 8. I'll probably just leave off the fact I believe it's from issue 95. When McFarlane Toys did figures well, they were works of art. Other figures, however, and even to this day, the figures that he's releasing, the ones that are questionable, do miss their mark considerably. But I think if he can get back to the bread and butter, the one that really started it for him, and going back into the Spawn line of figures, I think really that's going to be where a lot of these older collectors like myself will have a new resurgence and love for McFarlane Toys. Again, he kind of has moved away from the realm of Spawn, instead favoring more the movie releases, a lot of Walking Dead pieces, and he's done the color tops, I think, with mixed opinions. These, I don't mind at all that they have no posability. In fact, I would just remove the posability altogether, especially in the legs, because I think the legs is really the one thing where you can't do anything with the legs, so why make them posable? At the very least, you could have the arms movable and the head movable, which is something we looked at in this review, and I'm perfectly fine with that being enough and calling it a day. What I appreciate more with the older McFarlane stuff, especially when it comes to the Spawn releases, is I enjoy the sculpt. I mean, I could just look at this all day long and enjoy the sight of it. Its bright red pop of color on his cape and little accent areas on his armor really stand out, and especially when I'm going through totes, which just so happened to be why I found this figure in the first place, it's that red cape that stands out a mile away. I love this figure, and it's probably one of my all-time favorites of the Spawn Classic series of the comic covers. This one doesn't really do a whole lot. The other comic covers had him in different poses and featured with different things. This one, on the other hand, just has him standing, and I'm perfectly fine with that. It's more simplistic, yes, but it definitely does not take away from the sculpt that he's put into the body and as well into this exceptional looking cape. Fine work from McFarlane Toys. I can only hope that they're going to go back and kind of do some more Spawn stuff. As much as I like Walking Dead, I don't think McFarlane Toys is a right fit for Walking Dead. It's really a property that should have been handed towards NECA Toys. McFarlane Toys is now going to be coming out with some Star Trek releases, which I'll be excited to see what they're going to do with it. But I really think that they should go back to doing Spawn. At the very least, have Spawn running as an ongoing figure release line along with the other stuff that they're doing as well, because this is the stuff that got me interested in the McFarlane Toys. It was these Spawn figures, and it was the Movie Maniacs. And if we're not going to get any more Movie Maniacs, at the very least, he could go back and do some more Spawn pieces. Today, though, we were having a look at a long overdue video. Again, I just so happened to find this figure in a tote somewhere. This was the McFarlane Toys Spawn Series 25, the classic comic covers, Spawn 8, and I think there was something else on top of that. It was like an issue number 2, but that there's no way that's going to fit on a YouTube title. I know right now that's sometimes the biggest struggle I face as a reviewer. It's not reviewing the figures, it's trying to figure out how I can condense a very long title into something small enough that YouTube's going to accept. Hashtag real world problems. If you guys haven't had a chance to hit that little subscribe button down below, what are you waiting for? What exactly are you waiting for? Make sure you do it, because you'll never miss a beat when it comes to future videos coming onto this channel. And yeah, sure, of course, the next guy says, hit that bell notification. I'll say that too. Ring-a-ling-a-ling. Hit that bell notification so you'll always know when new videos are coming onto this channel. But make sure as well you head over to my main page. Here he goes talking about the main page again. Head over to the main page. Go to the section that says videos. Bada bing. That's everything I've posted up to this date. So that's your best way of knowing. If you've ever missed anything, go back to the main page. Check out the videos. That's the map to everything I've done up to this point. We're going to be having a look at some more throwbacks, because there's actually a whole bunch of figures I came across recently that I wanted to kind of go back and re-review. So we're going to have a look at a couple of those in the next coming videos. And of course, new stuff's always coming to this channel as well, guys. Never going to dismiss the newer things, because there's a lot of goodies coming onto the market now and in the next couple of months. Either way, guys, as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.